You know, sometimes all it takes is a smell. Just this morning, I pulled a pie out of the oven, apple, with a touch of cinnamon, just like Mama used to make, and land sakes alive, it hit me like a train. Not just the smell, mind you, but the memory. Like it was waiting just behind the steam on the kitchen window, waiting to catch me off guard. I leaned over that counter and closed my eyes, and suddenly I wasn't 85, standing in my little yellow house off Route 14. No, ma'am. I was 19 again, back in Selma, Alabama. Summer of '61, just before the fall brought everything tumbling down. Funny how your mind works, isn't it? How a pie can open a door you done bolted shut for 60 some odd years. Now, I ain't one for drama. Never have been. I was the quiet one in school. The polite one. Wore my skirts past my knees and said, "Yes, sir," and "No, ma'am," and kept my elbows off the table. But I'll tell you what, there's one story I never told a soul. Not even my late husband, God rest his kind heart. And Lord knows, he never deserved to be lied to. But, well, sometimes the truth is heavier than the silence. And lately, I've been feeling that weight more than usual. I suppose it's 'cause of little Tommy, my grandson. He's got those same eyes like burnished copper pennies in the sunlight. And every time I look at that boy, it's like I'm looking back through time. Back to a night I wasn't supposed to live. A kiss I wasn't supposed to feel. A song I wasn't supposed to dance to. You young folks wouldn't understand, I reckon. Back in my day, a girl's reputation was everything. And I mean everything. You sneezed too loud in church, and they'd have you married off or shipped off before the next Sunday sermon. We didn't have a pot to pee in, but Lord, we had rules. And you followed 'em, or you paid for it the rest of your life. I followed the rules. I did what I was told. Married the boy who wore the uniform. Smiled for the photos. Hosted the bridge nights. But deep down, I carried a secret. One I tucked away with the old letters, the worn-out baby clothes, the yellowed pictures under a stack of towels in the hall closet. You see, he wasn't the father of my firstborn. And nobody, not even him, ever knew. Not until now. I don't know why I'm telling you this really. Maybe 'cause time's catching up with me. Maybe 'cause the smell of apples does more than bake a pie. Maybe it stirs up the truth. Or maybe, just maybe, it's 'cause I'm tired of carrying it all alone. So, if y'all got a minute, pour yourself some sweet tea, sit a spell with me out here on the porch, and let me tell you something real. It ain't pretty. And it sure as sin ain't easy to say. But it's mine, and maybe that makes it worth sharing. 'Cause that summer, that one summer, changed everything, and I didn't even see it coming. Back then, the days felt longer. Not just 'cause we were kids running barefoot down dusty roads, chasing dragonflies and dreams, but because time moved slower. Life was quieter, softer. We didn't know we were poor, not really. We just made do with what we had. I was born Loretta Jean Crosby, but folks always called me Lori. Eldest of 5, out on the east side of Selma, where the land flattens out into cotton and sky. Our house was a crooked little thing with peeling green shutters and a front porch that creaked like it had something to say. Daddy built it with his own 2 hands, and Mama filled it with the smell of biscuits, hymn songs, and peppermint liniment. My world was small, but it was full. Every morning started with the rooster's holler and the clink of Daddy's boots hitting the porch. Mama'd already be at the stove, hummin' "What a Friend We Have in Jesus," wearing her apron with the cherries on it. We had chores, of course, Lord, did we? But we did 'em with our sleeves rolled up and our hearts set on the afternoon. Summers were the best. I remember the hum of cicadas so loud it sounded like the earth was singing. I'd lie in the grass with a book from the library and pretend I was someplace else, New York City, maybe, or Paris, though I couldn't be found it on a map. I always had my nose in a book, even when Mama said I ought to be learning how to hem a skirt or bake a decent cobbler. But truth be told, I wasn't like the other girls. I didn't dream of boys and weddings, not then. I dreamed of stories, of other lives. I thought maybe I'd write one day or teach. I believed in kindness more than ambition. I thought if you were good to folks, they'd be good right back. And I truly believed, deep in my bones, that people always came back to the ones they loved. That's what I believed. I was a quiet girl, obedient. The church ladies said, "Lori's got such nice manners," they'd whisper to Mama after Sunday service, fanning themselves with those little paper fans from the funeral home. I never caused trouble, never raised my voice. I wore dresses past my knees and bowed my head when I prayed. But underneath it all, there was something warm in me. Something I didn't know how to name back then. A restlessness, maybe. Or a hunger. Not for food, Lord knows Mama could cook, but for something I couldn't see yet. Something bigger. When I turned 19, I took a job at the town library, not the fancy new one they built later, but the old clapboard building off Main Street. I sorted index cards and dusted the shelves, wore my best cardigan even in the heat, and read poetry when no one was looking. Emily Dickinson, Langston Hughes, sometimes Whitman if I felt brave. And it was around that time I started courting Howard. He was tall, quiet, polite, came from a good family and was serving in the Navy. Folks said we made a handsome pair, and I suppose we did. He wrote me letters with little doodles in the margins, and I wrote back with pressed violets tucked inside. It all seemed so proper, so planned. But deep down, there was a part of me that wondered, is this all there is? Is that all life becomes? Pie suppers, PTA meetings, and Sunday hats? I didn't say it out loud, of course, but I felt it, like a soft wind just beneath my ribs. And if you'd asked me then what I thought the future would look like, I'd have smiled and told you the truth as I knew it. I believed life was about being good, being steady. I thought that was enough. But life, it's full of turns you don't see coming. And one of 'em was waiting for me just down the road, in a city I'd never meant to visit, on a night that started with laughter and ended with silence. I remember that night like it was yesterday, though Lord knows, I've tried to tuck it away deep where the memories don't hurt so much. It was late spring of '62, and the air in Birmingham was thick with jasmine and the buzz of summer starting to stir. My cousin, Millie, had invited me down for her senior prom, and I thought, why not? A little break from Selma, a little breath of something new. I was 19, just a girl in a pale blue dress that felt a little too fancy for me, with my hair pinned up just so. Mama had fussed over me like I was going to the White House instead of a dance, and I promised her I'd be careful. I was to meet up with Howard after, who was still in the Navy, but that night felt like it belonged to someone else. The gymnasium was filled with laughter and the squeak of polished shoes on the hardwood floor. Lanterns hung from the ceiling, casting a golden glow over the crowd. The smell of punch and perfume mixed in the air. Music thumped, a jazz band playing something lively and unfamiliar. It wasn't the hymns I was used to at church. It was wild and free and full of life. And then he was there, Wade Montgomery, playing the saxophone like the instrument was an extension of his soul. Dark eyes, easy smile, and hair that curled just right. I saw him from across the room, standing tall and swaying with the music. I don't know what it was about him. Maybe it was the way he looked at the world like it was a big, beautiful secret waiting to be discovered. I remember feeling my heart catch in my throat. I'm not proud to say it, but I was captivated. There was something about Wade that made me forget the rules, forget the small town, forget the future that had been laid out for me like a well-worn path. I couldn't explain it then. I just knew my pulse had quickened, like it was trying to tell me something I couldn't yet understand. He came over after his set, asked me if I wanted to dance. I hesitated. After all, I was a proper girl, remember? But Lord have mercy, I didn't have the strength to say no. His hands were gentle and his smile honest. We danced under those flickering lights to a song that felt like it was written just for us. We talked, oh, how we talked. About music, about dreams, about faraway places. He told me stories of New York City jazz clubs and late nights filled with saxophone solos. I told him about Selma and the library and my hopes that maybe, someday, I'd see the world beyond these dusty roads. It was just one night. One wild, shining night. But it changed everything. I remember sneaking away to the porch to catch my breath, the warm air heavy with magnolia and secrets. I knew, even then, that something in me had shifted, that the quiet girl who followed the rules was starting to wake up. I didn't tell a soul about that dance, not Mama, not Howard, not even Millie. It was my secret, a fragile spark that I hid away. Because what good would it have done to say it out loud? What could I have done with that feeling, that flicker of freedom? But oh, how it stayed with me. That night, the music wasn't just notes and rhythms, it was a promise. A whisper that life held more than what I'd been shown. And I, for one, was listening. Lord have mercy, if I had known then what was coming, I might have held on tighter to the innocence of that night. But life, she don't wait for no one. Not even a good girl like me. The weeks after that dance were different. At first, I tried to pretend it was just a memory. A pretty one, yes, but one that belonged to the past. But then, the whisper in my body grew louder. Morning sickness, a growing belly hidden beneath loose dresses, and the knowing look in Mama's eyes when she caught me off guard. I was scared out of my wits, afraid to tell a soul, except for the mirror where I faced a girl I'd barely recognized. How could I have let this happen? What would folks say? What would Howard say? He was my fiancé, my ticket to a proper life. And here I was, carrying a secret that could shatter everything. You young folks wouldn't understand. Back in those days, a girl got pregnant before marriage, and the world came crashing down like a house of cards. You were branded, whispered about in church pews, and sometimes worse. And me? I was supposed to be the good girl, the one who never stirred trouble. Mama was there, in her own quiet way. She didn't say much, but her eyes held storms. I could tell she was afraid, not just for me, but for what this might mean for our family's name in Selma. There were days she sat by my bedside, holding my hand and hummin' old hymns, and other days she was as cold as the Alabama winter. Sometimes I wished she'd yell at me to make it easier to bear, but all I got was silence and the weight of unspoken prayers. Howard, he came home early from the Navy. They sent him back because of some trouble on the base. I thought maybe I could tell him then, that maybe, just maybe, he'd understand. But every time I opened my mouth, the words stuck like tar. I was scared, afraid he'd see the truth in my eyes before I said it, and that would be the end of us both. So I kept it buried, deep as I could. I wore long sleeves and loose skirts. I smiled when folks asked about my health. I played the part of the dutiful fiancé, though my heart was a mess of fear and shame. The hardest part was feeling alone in a crowd. Everyone had expectations of me, the preacher's daughter, the future Navy wife. No one could know the secret I carried, not even my closest friends. I felt like I was walking a tightrope over a chasm, and one wrong step would send me plummeting. There were nights I'd lie awake, clutching the thin cotton sheets, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Was I a bad person? Was this some punishment for my wild heart? I prayed for strength, for forgiveness, for a way out of the mess I'd found myself in. But life kept moving forward, and I had to keep up, whether I wanted to or not. And the town, oh, the town was watching. Rumors swirled like summer storms, though no one had a word to say for sure. I could feel the eyes behind lace curtains, the whispers behind closed doors. I was trapped between who I was supposed to be and the truth I couldn't speak. Sometimes I think about that girl, the one so scared she couldn't breathe. I wanted to run away, to disappear. But I stayed. I made choices that were hard and heavy and full of sacrifice. Because back then, in Selma, Alabama, secrets were kept tight. And love, well, love sometimes had to wait. I remember it like it was carved into my soul, the moment everything came crashing down. It was early fall of '62, just as the leaves started turning gold and crimson, and the air had that crisp bite that told you winter was near. But inside me, it felt like a storm had ripped through and left nothing but quiet devastation. I was sitting in the kitchen, the sun casting long shadows through the lace curtains, when Mama walked in with a letter in her hand. Her face was pale, more pale than I'd ever seen. She didn't speak right away, just handed it to me, her hands trembling ever so slightly. It was from Howard. I unfolded it carefully, the paper rough between my fingers, and the words hit me like a freight train. He'd found out. Not from me, mind you, no, that would have been too simple. Some town gossip, someone with a sharp tongue and a sharper eye, had whispered the truth. The truth I'd buried so deep I thought it'd never see the light of day. He was coming home early. He was angry. He felt betrayed. And he wanted answers. I remember the room spinning. I sat down hard on the wooden chair, clutching the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to the earth. Time just stopped. I swear, for a moment, the clock on the wall didn't tick. It was like the whole world held its breath with me. I was terrified, not just of Howard, but of what I'd lost. The life I thought I'd have, the promises we'd made, the future we'd planned. And the worst part? I knew I couldn't take it back. The secret was out, and there was no sewing it shut again. I was a good girl, or at least I'd tried to be. But here I was, shattered by the weight of a truth I never wanted anyone to know. I'd held it close, protected it, and now it was tearing me apart. I felt a storm of emotions crash over me: shame, sorrow, fear, and heartbreak. And somewhere deep inside, a flicker of defiance, because I knew that no matter what happened, that baby, my little girl, was innocent. She didn't deserve the consequences of my mistakes. That night, I cried like I never thought I would. Tears for what was lost, for what was about to change, and for the life I'd never imagined. But in that moment of shattering, something else happened too. I realized that the truth, as painful as it was also a kind of freedom. A chance to be honest, with Howard, with myself, and maybe someday with my daughter. It wasn't the end of the story. It was the turning point. And while I couldn't see what came next, I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. After the storm passed, everything felt different. Like the world had shifted under my feet, and the ground I'd always known was no longer steady. I woke up each morning in that little house in Selma, but it was as if I was living someone else's life, a life softened at the edges, quieter, more fragile. Howard came home, sure enough, but the man I knew wasn't the same man I saw walking through that door. His eyes held questions, hurt, and something colder, disappointment that I wasn't ready to meet. We spoke little at first. Words felt sharp and dangerous, like we were tiptoeing around a minefield neither of us wanted to set off. I buried myself in routine, cooking, cleaning, taking care of little Suzanne. The baby, my beautiful girl with the copper eyes, was the one thing that held me steady. When I looked at her, I saw hope, a future that maybe, just maybe, could be brighter than the past. But inside, I was lost. I felt hollow in a way I'd never known. Like the girl who once dreamed of stories and far-off places had been replaced by a shadow who whispered, "Keep quiet and don't make waves." The fire that once burned inside me was dimmed, and for a long time, I couldn't find the spark to light it again. I questioned everything, my worth, my choices, even my faith. How could God let me walk through such darkness? Was this punishment for my mistakes? I prayed for forgiveness, not just from others, but from myself. And every night I'd hold Suzanne close and whisper promises I wasn't sure I could keep. Selma carried on, oblivious and relentless. The neighbors didn't speak openly of what had happened, but I felt their eyes on me, quiet judgment hiding behind polite smiles. It was a lonely kind of isolation, worse than any silence. Howard and I stayed together. We made a life, yes, but it was different than what I'd imagined. Love, in those days, was sometimes more about holding on than letting go. We found comfort in routine, in the small joys, the laughter of our daughter, the feel of a warm breeze on the porch, the quiet hum of the cicadas on summer nights. But I was changed. I wasn't the same girl who danced under the lanterns to jazz music in Birmingham. I was a woman who carried a secret no one would ever know, a secret that shaped every step I took. And though I wore a smile for the world, inside, there was a quiet ache, a longing for something I couldn't quite name. Maybe forgiveness, maybe freedom, maybe just peace. Looking back now, I see that those years were a kind of waiting to heal, waiting to accept, waiting to find myself again. It wasn't an easy road, but it was mine. You know, sometimes life has a way of sneaking up on you when you least expect it. After all those years of silence and shadow, there came a moment, a small, almost invisible crack in the darkness that let a little light in. It wasn't a thunderbolt or a grand revelation. No, ma'am, it was just a whisper, a gentle nudge from the past, or maybe from within. I was sitting on the porch one late afternoon, the sky painted with those soft pinks and purples that make you catch your breath, when I saw Mrs. Jenkins down the street struggling with her groceries. Now, she was an elderly lady, sharp as a tack, but getting on in years, and I knew she didn't have anyone to help her. Without much thought, I set down my knitting and walked over. Helping her carry those bags inside wasn't much, but it felt like something, like maybe I was still part of this world, still needed for something. And Lord, the smile she gave me, warm and grateful, felt like a balm on my soul. I sat and talked with her for a good while, and we shared stories about the good old days, about children grown and lives changed. That afternoon, I realized how much I'd been holding myself back, locking away not just my secrets, but my own heart. For so long, I'd been living in the past, carrying the weight of that secret as if it were a chain. But helping Mrs. Jenkins, listening to her stories, sharing my own memories, it reminded me that life, no matter how hard, still had moments of kindness and connection. I started to see that maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to let some of that weight go. I didn't have to carry it all alone anymore. It was a small step, yes, but sometimes the smallest steps lead to the biggest changes. From then on, I found myself looking for little chances to reach out, to neighbors, to friends, even strangers. I volunteered at the church kitchen, helped organize the local book club, and even started writing little notes to my grandchildren, telling them stories from my youth, things I hadn't dared say aloud before. It wasn't an easy road, and I still had my quiet moments of doubt and loneliness. But the fire inside me, once dimmed, began to glow again, not with the wild flame of youth, but with a steady, warm light that could see the beauty in the everyday. I found new purpose in these small acts of love and kindness, and with each one, I felt a little freer, a little stronger. The past was still there, sure enough, but it didn't have to define me. And as I watched Suzanne grow into a mother herself, I saw in her eyes a reflection of all I'd hoped for, a chance at happiness, at forgiveness, at a life lived with a little less fear. Maybe that's what growing older teaches you, that hope isn't about forgetting the pain, but about learning to carry it with grace. And Lord willing, I'll keep carrying mine with just thought. I've carried that secret with me for so long, it felt like a part of my very bones, like it was stitched into the fabric of who I am. But as the years rolled on, and I grew older and maybe a little wiser, I came to see that holding on didn't mean I had to stay trapped. There was a moment, a quiet morning in the spring, when I stood in the attic of this old house, sorting through dusty boxes filled with memories, old letters tied up with faded ribbons, photographs yellowed at the edges, and that black and white picture of me at the prom, holding a glass of punch, the one where he wasn't there. That photo I'd never shown a soul. I held it in my hands and felt the weight of all those years of the fear, the shame, the love, and the loss. And I realized something. The past is never something you can erase. It's a part of you, yes, but it doesn't have to define your future. I took that photo, that box, and I carried it down to the garden. The sun was shining through the oak trees, casting dappled light on the earth. And with a deep breath, one full of every prayer I'd whispered in the dark, I buried it beneath the roots of the old magnolia tree. It was my way of saying goodbye, not to forget, but to let go. I made a choice that day. A choice to live my life without regret, without bitterness, to embrace the woman I'd become, scars and all. Because Lord, if I could learn anything, it's that life keeps moving forward, no matter how heavy the burden. I chose to forgive myself, to forgive those who judged me, even if only in whispers, to find peace in the quiet moments, in the laughter of my grandchildren, in the warmth of the sun on my face. That secret, it's mine to carry, sure enough, but it's not a chain. It's a thread in the tapestry of my life, a reminder of how far I've come. And I want to tell you this, whoever you are listening out there, sometimes the hardest thing you can do is to forgive yourself, but it's also the most powerful. So here I am, choosing to live, to love, to hope, without pretensions, without regrets, just forward, because that's what life is about after all, moving forward, one step at a time. And I reckon that's enough. You know, after all these years, I've come to understand that life ain't about perfection. It ain't about having all the answers or living up to what folks expect of you. No, ma'am. Life is messy and beautiful and full of surprises, some good, some hard as nails. I spent so long carrying a secret that I thought would break me, and in some ways, it did. But it also taught me something precious. I learned that the weight of our past doesn't have to keep us down. It can shape us, yes, but it don't have to define us. I've learned that forgiveness, especially forgiving yourself, is the kind of freedom money can't buy. It's the quiet strength that lets you get up when you're feeling broken. It's the light that guides you through the dark. And I learned that love, real love, is messy too. It's not always the fairy tale you read about in books. Sometimes it's holding on when you want to let go. Sometimes it's choosing to stay even when it's hard. Sometimes it's loving someone with all your heart, even when you can't tell them the whole truth. I've learned that people are complicated. Good folks make mistakes. And that's all right. That's just how we're made. Most of all, I've learned to live in the moments I have, to cherish the small joys, a child's laugh, the smell of fresh-baked bread, the sound of cicadas in the summer night. Maybe what I'm trying to say is this: we all carry things we don't want others to know. Secrets, regrets, pain. But holding on to them tight won't heal those wounds. Sometimes it's okay to let a little light in, to be vulnerable, to find your own kind of peace. So maybe it's time to stop waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect apology, the perfect life. Because the truth is, the perfect moment might never come. But the moments you're living right now, they're yours. And they're precious. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this: don't be afraid to carry your scars with pride. Don't be afraid to forgive yourself and to open your heart to love and hope again. Because at the end of the day, that's what makes us human. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Well, now, before I let you go, I want to speak to you straight from my heart. This story, it ain't just about some dusty chapter in the past. No, it's about today, tomorrow, and all the days we have left. It's about love, secrets, and the courage to carry on. I wonder sometimes, do you believe that true love is supposed to come back around? That no matter how far it wanders, no matter the mistakes, it finds its way home? I reckon that's a question that's as old as time itself. Some folks say love is patient, some say it's forgiving, and some say it's just plain stubborn. I can tell you this much: I lived a life shadowed by a secret, one that might have torn us apart if it ever saw the light. But love, real love, it held us together. It didn't always look like what you see in the movies, but it was there. Quiet, steady, like the beat of a heart that won't give up. Sometimes, when I sit here on the porch in the evening, the wind rustling the magnolia leaves, I think about that night, that man with the saxophone, and the way his eyes looked at me like I was the only girl in the world. And sometimes, just sometimes, I think maybe he remembers me too. Maybe love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. Maybe it's about the moments you keep locked inside, the memories that linger like the smell of apple pie cooling on a windowsill. It's about the choices we make, the secrets we carry, and the hope that lives quietly beneath it all. I'm not asking you to have all the answers. I'm just asking you to think about it, about your own stories, your own hidden truths. Because maybe, if we're brave enough to face them, those stories can teach us something about forgiveness, about strength, about what it means to be truly human. So, I leave you with this. What do you believe? Is true love meant to come back? And if it does, how will you know when it's there? Thank you for sitting with me today, for listening to my story. It means more than you know. And if you've got a secret or a story of your own, maybe it's time to share it. Or at least, to hold it gently in your heart. Because in the end, that's what connects us all. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to keep us going.